Shalom, and welcome back to Bnei Noach Academy, Thoughts on the Torah. Please remember to hit the like button, to subscribe, and most importantly, to share this insight and inspiration with friends and family. If you look in the book of Genesis, chapter 6, verse 9, which really, according to the division, based on the tradition passed down from Moses, this is actually the beginning, not the ninth verse of a chapter, so to speak, but rather it's the beginning of a Torah portion. And in fact, the second Torah portion, which is called Noach. Why? Because this begins with the words, Eile Toldot Noach. These are the offsprings, or this is the history of Noach. And then it continues telling us that Noach was a very righteous man, very earnest in his generations. What does this mean in his generations, in his age? What does that mean? Well, obviously, he was a righteous man in his time. He couldn't have been in our time a righteous man because he's not alive today. He's here in spirit. He still continues to inspire us. We talk about him, but he's not here, so he's not a righteous person today, nor yesterday. So why would the Torah have to make a point to tell us that he was a righteous man in his generations, in his times? Well, the sages tell us that this is to point out that notwithstanding the fact that the people in his generation were so terrible, were so despicable, were so lowly, yet he managed to maintain his integrity as a tzaddik, as a pious man. He did not get swayed. He did not get influenced by what was going on around him. However, there is another opinion that says, well, the Torah is trying to point out that when it says, quote, he was a tzaddik, he was a righteous man, he was pious, he was earnest, he was perfect, that's only relative to his generation. But, quote, had he been in the generation of Abraham, or in other generations, perhaps he wouldn't have stood out so much. Not that he would have been a bad person, but he wouldn't have been standing out as an exceptional, extraordinary person. Now I ask you, of what value is it if this is what the Torah is telling us? In fact, it would seem so antithetical to what the Torah typically does. It typically does not point out any negativity about anyone and about anything. In fact, even in this week's Parsha, we find that the Torah does not wish to refer to animals, non-kosher animals, in a derogatory term of unclean or impure, and therefore it goes out of its way to point out that they are the animals that are not pure. Now, the nuance of this only plays well in Hebrew, in the original text. But the point is, of what value is it? Why would the Torah make a point to portray Noach in a negative light? Or so it seems, because you're saying only comparative to his generation. Well, if we really look at it just a little deeper than the surface, we'll appreciate that this is actually the utmost compliment to his great piety. You see, to be in the generation of Abraham, to have someone like Abraham around and to be a righteous person, that's an accomplishment, but it's not the ultimate accomplishment. It's not like, wow, because look, you do have sources of influence. You do have sources of inspiration. But to be in a generation like Noah was, and not to get swayed nor swept away by the common culture, by the despicable, lowly ways of the people around you, which as human beings, we are influenced by our surroundings. That's the way God made us. Naturally, we tend to get influenced and to be impressed by our surroundings. And the fact is that this is why you have so much advertisement, marketing, and so on. It makes sense because this is exactly how the human being is wired. Thus, the Torah is pointing out, true, Noach was only a tzaddik relative to his generation, relative to his times. But still, if you really analyze it, think of what kind of great effort it took to resist going with the flow, to go against the stream, to go against the tide of the times. That is extraordinary. And that should encourage us all and influence us all to do the same. We live in times when there's so many waves of craziness. There are so many voices of nonsense and insanity, certainly as far as it comes to morality and ethics. Sometimes it feels like, just go with the flow. No, we get inspiration from Noach. Go against it. Even though you may not become the ultimate pious person to match a giant like Abraham or like Moses, okay, that's fine. Even if you're only going to end up being a pious, righteous tzaddik, only comparatively to the people around you, you still make that effort. And God appreciates that it ain't easy because it's a big struggle. It takes a big fight to actually overcome that temptation of getting swept away with and going with the flow.